Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to this week's conversation. As always, this is Coach Bailey joining you today from the interwebs. And today we will be speaking about excuse me, celebrate me. I'm so sorry, I was reading from the slide and I'm trying to say celebrate, and coach immediately came out. As always, this is a conversation meant for everyone out there who's looking for a little bit of encouragement, someone that's looking for positive words of affirmation, the individuals that's out there that's looking for confirmation, especially, as well as alignment. So, if you feel that any of those align with what you feel, think, or perceive in your reality, please feel free to go ahead and continue to chime into this conversation in the description below, as well as the comments. You have to excuse me. Apparently, I'm speaking in cursive today. I am dealing with some nasal congestion here, so I do admit some of my words may be a little bit cursive or connected, so I do apologize ahead of time. That is my small disclaimer, as well as I will be utilizing the Fair Use Act when it comes down to providing information, education, and I am going to go ahead and put that disclaimer out there because I will be referring to other people's resources just so that I can further support our message today. As always, please like and share this conversation. The more that we get this message out to people, the better we make the world around us, as well as the better that we make our community. It's essential that we take the time to plant seeds in our world and in our environment around us that will grow into prosperous, beautiful, positive assets and elements in our community. I think, and especially these current times, it's very easy to get lost in some of the negative things that are presented in our world and in the society at times. And it's super important to do as much work as we can to spread positivity, to show that there are great people out in the world and that there's great ideas that's being fostered in our communities. However, we have to do our part to push these messages as well as share it with other people. So I do just want to take this time to thank you ahead of time for sharing this with your friends and whoever you feel will connect with this or will have a connection with this message. And let's proceed. So today we will be looking at the song Celebrate Me by the AI artist and Gross. I'm not very for sure how to pronounce their name, but I do want to say and share that this idea is coming from a TikToker that shared some sentiments about this song. She was just really inspired, and her message essentially was that she found herself listening to more music that affirmed some of the things that she was believing in herself and thinking of herself. And that really inspired me to create this because I do think that there's a lot of times where, and like I said earlier, our current society is doing a very intense job at punching down on people. So it's our job as members of the society, advocates of the society, and just people living in the society to do our very best to overcome this messaging. I think sometimes these messages are put out to enforce or to influence people in a specific kind of way, into different activities, into different behaviors. It's meant to make people feel desperate. It's meant to make people feel that there's no reason to stand up or to fight back or to call out bad behaviors that they are witnessing, whether that be at a grand scale or a small scale. And I think the grandest thing about our life and our reality is ourselves. So in this moment, I want for you to find a reason to celebrate yourself. I really enjoyed the lyrics when I looked over them. I did edit out like a second verse or a second session because I realized it was just a repeat of the words that's already on display. So I've taken the liberty to highlight a few parts of the song that really stood out to me. Of course, like I said beforehand, you can go ahead and listen to the song on your free time. I did put the lyrics on the screen so that you can refer to them as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and read out loud the things that really stood out to me. I made it through more than they knew, or they know, so sorry. I made it through more than they know. Every scar, every fall, every place I've been in, I'm still here breathing, still finding my way. Ain't nobody clapping for me, so I'm clapping for myself. For all the nights I cried, but still I stay alive. It's going to be hard sometimes. It's going to feel too much. You're going to break down. You're going to cry. You're going to want to give up. But believe me, you're going to make it even when you can't see. You're stronger than the moment. You're just going to, or excuse me, you just have to believe, or you just got to believe. And I won't apologize. These lines really stood out to me because I do feel that sometimes when we are in a desperate space in our minds, when our reality is becoming too much to bear, when life sometimes gets too hard to hold, some of these sentiments come to us. Such ideas such as, this is too much, this is too heavy, I can't deal with this, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want this. And then, of course, come some of those harsher thoughts that enter into our minds sometimes. In moments like this, it's important to note to yourself that this moment is a moment in time. And even if things are constantly happening back to back to back to back, in moments where we feel these emotions and have these thoughts and we're overwhelmed and we're sensing a self of losing control or a moment where we feel like we're losing control, it's important to have grounding methods to help bring yourself back to your own reality so that you are able to overcome some of these emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Some of that may look like grounding techniques. So, what can you hear? What can you see? What can you taste? What can you touch? And what can you smell? These are grounding techniques that will allow for you to utilize your environment to bring yourself back to a calm state of mind. This grounding technique helps a lot of my clients realize that what they are feeling and what they are seeing, though it is real, there's something that they can do about it. You can take yourself out of the moment of a stressful situation or a circumstance that's bringing you pressure and harmful thoughts and harmful emotions by saying to yourself, what is happening in this moment? Essentially, is to bring you back to your mindfulness practices, which are, of course, written out here through this method. So let's use an example. Let's say that you have a test coming up. It's extremely stressful. You're extremely scared of the outcome and the situation that the test presents itself. I think a lot of times a test is sometimes it feels like it's the end all be all on whether you're going to graduate or pass the class. It's sometimes confusing because you may have an instructor or a textbook that isn't very clear, so you are unsure of how well you'll do. And there's other factors that could contribute to a stress being super stressful. Maybe you just have test anxiety overall, and the way you study for a test has in the past had bad implications or something like that. Instead of actually stressing out about the situation, take a moment to say to yourself, what can I hear? You might hear the cars outside driving by. You might hear a family member or a loved one in your home singing or talking or in the kitchen or in the bathroom. You might see birds outside your window, rain, snow, leaves, trees. You might taste this morning's breakfast still on your tongue. You might feel the coziness of your sweater or the tightness of your socks. And you may smell the perfume of your favorite brand or the rain settling from this morning's shower. With each one of these elements, when it taps into your senses, is meant to bring you back into this current present moment. Yes, the test is next week. We know that. But right now, how are we doing? And that's what you should be asking yourself when you are going through this practice. Right now, how are you doing? This allows for you to be able to say to yourself, right now, I'm okay. I'm surrounded by things that bring me joy, by people that bring me joy, by smells, tastes, and sights that bring me peacefulness in this moment. It gives your brain a break from the constant overworking. Sometimes when we're in a stressful state of mind, it's almost like our mind is that hamster on the hamster wheel and it's constantly going and going and going and going. And depending on how your brain is structured or the chemicals that's being dispersed in your brain at the moment, your brain can become addicted to overthinking, course correcting, and planning for the worst situation at all times, which of course wreaks havoc on not only just your day to day activities and how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the world around you, but it also has crucial implications to your overall health. Having higher levels of cortisol in the body does cause issues down the line if it's constant and always an issue and always at a elevated state. So having this five sense grounding technique as a tool in your arsenal to bring yourself back into this current moment is one tool that I provide to my clients so that we can refocus on what's happening now. Because yes, even though the test is happening next week or the conversation with your employer is happening next week, today you're okay. Today you're safe. Today you are in a place that brings you joy and brings you peace. And we should not, even though the future, is a thing that's on the calendar, you can look at your calendar and say, okay, next week is going to be blah, blah, blah. Overall, it's still a fictitious idea. Next week doesn't necessarily have to go down the way that you think it might go down. Next week could be a great week. So instead of stressing about the bad things that could happen, let's bring ourselves back to a current moment where we are in a peaceful, mindful place. And what I have realized with a lot of my clients is that this method helps. It helps get you back to our main message of today, which is celebrating yourself. You can, after you do the practice, you can say to yourself, hey, actually, now that I've calmed down, I realize I am capable of big things and great things. Like, I was stressing about this test next week, but now that I think about it and I've had a time and some moments to calm down my nervous system, I actually passed all of my tests. Or I actually have a really good relationship and have good conversations with my coworkers and my boss. So there's no reason for me to be freaking out or having high anxiety or being nervous about anything that is to come next week. And between now and 7 days from now, I know I have full control over everything that I am experiencing in this moment. Now, on the flip side, there is a reality where the five senses grounding technique does not work because there are real things that are happening next week. There are things that are filling you with fear and anxiety because this might be a situation where, let's say, you haven't been doing very well in this class. Let's say you actually don't have a good relationship with your coworkers or the people at your job. Even for some people, let's say you're sitting here and you're trying to do this grounding practice, and the things that you hear or see or touch or smell or taste brings you more anxiety. For some people, the taste that they have in their mouth is nothing because they have nothing to eat. They had totally nothing to eat today because they can't afford to eat. Or maybe you smell something because you're in a bad place or a place that you did not select for yourself or a place that is not taken care of for whatever the reason is. When it comes down to these situations where you are not able to use the five sense grounding technique to put yourself in a different mindset, because all of these techniques will bring you back into awareness that something isn't going the way that you need it to in order for you to feel safe and comfortable. That brings us into our next example or our next technique that you can utilize. So, one thing that I always do with all of my clients is I want to know, what is your reality? What are you dealing with? What is your circumstance? What is the reason that you're coming to me? A lot of times, our realities are shaped based on these three pillars: our work, our school, and our family. And I selected those in this slide because these are example of where we put our own expectations as it relates to societal norms. These are the main arenas that we are constantly in battle with when it comes down to being ourselves, how to show up as ourselves, and how to fit in. It's very human to want to be able to fit in and not be ousted by the group. It's just part of our human psychology. So I did go ahead and put a little blurb of information on this slide, as well as a citation, just so you can refer back to that information if you want to. But one thing I always present to my clients is, yes, work, school, and family are our realities. But what type of expectations are we putting on ourselves that are coming from our internalized thoughts about our reality and how we shape our world? And how does that compare with also what we've internalized from the outside world and the realities that we have to deal with? So, going back to one of the examples that I used earlier, let's say next week you have a meeting with your supervisor. Things are not going well at work, and you're scared, you're nervous, you really don't know what to expect because you've been doing everything that you could do in your power at work, whether it's the different assignments and projects that's due, whether it's being social with people, whether it's doing your best to wake up early or stay late so that you can make it in for that day on time and not late this time, or whatever the case might be. You now have this meeting on your calendar and you're freaking out about it. What I would advise in a situation like that, or like this one, is take a breath firstly. A deep inhale and a deep exhale. You should feel your shoulders roll back a bit, and you should feel your belly becoming full of air. And what I always say is, let's look at the reality of the situation, because there's always several realities to any one situation. So, one reality with this situation is that we all need work in order to pay bills. That's just how our society is structured currently. We all need work in order to have a place to live, to eat, etc. So, the reality of this situation is your job a healthy place? The inside reality are those things that I mentioned: the fact that you have bills, the fact that you have responsibilities, the fact that you need bills in order to survive, or excuse me, you need money in order to survive, and the main way to get money is through employment. The outside realities could be that you have a good government job. People are like, don't give up on that job. I know you've been dealing with a lot of stress from this job, but at least you have a job. In this economy, a lot of people don't have jobs, etc., etc., etc. So, the biggest thing when it comes down to dealing with a challenging reality is listening to yourself and having your own self-integrity to say what's healthy for you and what's not healthy for you. Sometime discovering that takes time with a coach like myself, a therapist, or even just people around you that support you, love you, and know you. So, learning what is ideal for yourself and what you truly need out this situation is super important to prioritize. So, if you are in a unhealthy work environment, or if you are constantly late, let's say you are the problem. Depending on what the situation is, I'm going to pivot and bounce. And you let me know in the comments if you can follow or if you would like for me to go further onto any specific topics. But for now, I will be jumping and bouncing from one concept to another with some examples and some brief descriptions. So let's begin. So, the first concept that we will be dealing with will be the harmful work environment. Let's say you're being bullied. Let's say it's a hostile work environment. Let's say you're doing everything right that you're supposed to be doing. You're coming in 5 minutes early. You're completing all of your daily tasks. You're following the rules and regulations of your employer. However, you're still being picked on by your supervisor, by your boss, by your colleagues, whomever. In this type of situation, I would suggest that your priority is your sanity, okay? Your sanity, your well-being, and your image of yourself. Because even though we are built to be strong people, constantly being in a dangerous or a hostile or a devastating environment does diminish who we are at times. It does pick away at our self-esteem, our image of self, and it just makes life hard sometimes. With that being said, your reality is also being molded by the ideas that you have, the concepts that are put onto you, as well as the time that we have. So, in this example, you could be one of these people that, and this is totally fine, it's not a bad thing, but you could be a person who your personal reality is that I'm strong, I got this, I'm not going to let this tear me down, I'm not going to let this prevent me from having other opportunities, etc. And those are great concepts and great ideas to have, excuse me. I meant ideas. Those are great ideas to have and stories to have about yourself that have been supported through your past experiences. The other thing that we need to look at is the outside realities. So, the outside realities could be, like I mentioned earlier, this is a good paying job. This is a good government job that everybody wants. There were 100 applicants. Out of all the applicants, I was the one that got the job. And I need this job. I need this job in order to pay my bill and to overall be a responsible adult. The time comes into play with how much time we're enduring these discomforts, how much time that we might have in the workforce or in this specialty, as well as the time that we are committing to not only just the job environment, but building our reputation, building our career, the time that we are exposed to this hostile work environment, those have negative implications as well, and the time that we have ahead of us. So, one concept that I am borrowing from is from Tony Gaskins. He is a fellow life coach out there in the world doing his thing, but he had a concept that he spoke about years ago about having a credit score for relationships. And though we are not talking about romantic relationships in this concept, I am borrowing his idea when it comes down to stress management. When you are in a harmful work environment or a stressful work environment, it costs you substantially. It costs you in ways that we may not even have words to describe or ways to measure. To me, being in a harmful work environment where you are constantly being criticized, demeaned, belittled, has such a ginormous negative impact on your health, on your self image, and on your family or your reality. Because sometimes people don't have families, but you still go home and you're still crying in the shower. You still go home and you're just empty. You still go home and you're just staring at the wall. You still go home, and when tomorrow comes, you dread waking up. So, those are huge, huge costs to being in a harmful work environment. And when we're looking at the credit score and just your reality as it compares to that, these are things that will drain your credit score of joy and of happiness. It will give you the worst credit score. Let's say before you encounter this harmful work environment, you had an 850 credit score. But with all these bad things that are happening, yeah, the pay is good. Let's say the pay gives you plus 50. You have that one friend that always meets you during your lunch break. That's plus 20. But all these other things are minus 100, minus 150, minus 75. And it's bringing you down to a credit score of 200, 300. I don't know what the lowest number you can have for a credit score is, but let's just say 200 is one of the lowest or 300 is one of the lowest. It's not worth your joy and your peace to stay in this job. So, to hell with the concepts from the outside world that this is a good job. Why won't you just keep it? It's not a good job. This job is not treating me well. This job is demeaning. This job is disrespecting me, and this job is not holding me with regard. Forget the ideas that you had inside. Yeah, I got bills to pay, so I'm just going to stick it through. Or, yeah, but it's not so bad. It's only bad on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But I work from home on Friday, so I don't have to deal with it. Those realities are costing you your health, your well being, and your joy. So, in this type of situation, we have to be able to value ourselves and our own vision of happiness and joy more than we value societal norms. Because there's always another option. The societal norm is, yes, to have a job, etc., etc. But just because that's a societal norm does not mean that you have to put yourself in any situation to get there. Because the reality of that is, yes, you need a job to work. Oh, excuse me, you need a job to pay bills. But you don't have to have this job. You don't have to have the bad job. Let's start looking for you some opportunities where you are going to be respected. So that could look like going to a different job. That could look like taking leave from this one. For a lot of people out there, I do have a human resource background. So there are specific kind of leaves that you can take for mental health breaks. This could be you going back to school and furthering your education so that you could get different kind of opportunities or higher ranked opportunities. This could mean that you start your own business. This could mean that you join a family business or you join a business with a friend. And there's a lot of people that are starting their own businesses these days and they need help. So reaching out to your local small business and say, "Hey, where can I help?" These are examples of how you could still do what's right for you and live up to those expectations of I'm a hard worker, I'm a good person, I am capable of things, the ideas that you have of yourself, while also not putting yourself in harm's way at this hostile work environment. So if this is a reality for you, when it comes down to my coaching business, I have a few different type of approaches. It really just depends on how much time you want for us to spend together. That could look like us talking through some things, building up your confidence and your self-esteem so that you can be able to speak to some of these bigger concepts for yourself. It could also look like us working in a more hands-on way to build out what your dream job would look like, what your dream opportunity would look like, and overall what your concept and idea of freedom looks like to get yourself away from the harm that has come from this work environment. I do believe that some of the clients I've had in the past, when they are working in a harmful work environment, there's a lot of rebuilding my clients have to do when it comes down to rebuilding self-esteem, rebuilding image of self, rebuilding how they move in the world, rebuilding how they show up in the world, whether that be at a workplace, anywhere, grocery store, anywhere. Because these hostile work environments do have implications on the whole of your life. So, working together in a real way that's very hands-on to build that confidence back up, build that self-esteem back up is my specialty. Also, let's say going back to the other example, let's say you are the problem, you are the drama. You know for a fact that you're always late for work, and you know that's against your policy. You might work at like a retail store or a place like Amazon or another kind of warehouse that has a point system, and they're like, hey, you're almost at the number that's going to get you terminated because you keep coming in late. Again, going back to the ideas of self, as well as the concepts that the world put onto us. What are some of these things? When it comes down to ideas, some of the ideas I've heard people say is, well, I just need a job. I just need a job so that I can pay bills. And this is true. Some of the concepts that I've heard people share with me is that, well, this at least is an easy job. It doesn't require you to have XYZ. It doesn't require you to have all these certifications or degrees to get in the door. So you should be doing everything that you can to keep this job. Keep in mind, once again, concepts, at least in my example in this conversation today, concepts are outside realities and ideas are our inside realities. And then time. I always have to remind us of time because time is so precious. So, with this concept, if I'm noticing with my client that, yeah, this person's always showing up late to work, they have this job that they could care less about, but they're just showing up because they have to pay bills. What I would ask you to do is dive a little bit deeper. I could assume that this job, you don't care about it. You don't care at all about the job, and because of that, you're late. I could also assume that maybe it has nothing to do with like the level that you care, because for some people, including myself, when I was working in corporate, I was good at it, but it's not the thing that really spoke to my heart and my soul. Now, don't get me wrong, I did care to a certain degree, but I think in some instances I did not care. I never cared about my title or what I did or any of that. So bringing it back to your situation or this example, one other element would be to dive deeper to see exactly why do you keep showing up late for work? Is it because you're not getting the support that you need at home? Maybe you have to drop off your little one before school starts, and because of how soon your little one's classes start versus what time you're supposed to start your shift, it always causes you to be late. Maybe you have like some sort of like sleep disorder, or you have insomnia, or you suffer from migraines, or you're having a hard time with executive functioning where you're wanting to be there on time, but there's a long laundry list of things that you always have to do beforehand. It could be different things like ADHD or even OCD, where you're like, I'm always on time when I leave, but by the time I get down the street and around the corner, I have to double back because I think I left the stove on. Could it be environmental factors, such as you know for a fact that from 8 o'clock to 8:15, there's a train that pops up. There could be situations where there's a particular person you're trying to avoid. Maybe there's always a specific security guard that is harassing you or something of that nature where you're trying to avoid a certain type of person at a specific time. So you come in a little bit late just to make sure that you avoid that person. Or even, let's say that person's shift ends at 8 o'clock. So you know if you get there at 7:55, you're going to encounter this person. But if you get there at 8:05 or 8:10, you're not going to see this person. Is it a transportation issue? Maybe you used to be able to get to work at time, but now because your mode of transportation has changed, now you're always late. So for my clients that whenever you share anything with me, I always will do my best to dive deeper. And if I ever am missing anything, I always have an open floor where my clients can say, no, I don't really think that's the problem, or I'm actually feeling like this is more of a problem than the thing that you mentioned. So any of these things could be a reality for you. And ultimately, it goes back to your value system and who you are. I I'm really, really, really big on my clients focusing on what brings them peace, what brings them mindfulness, and what respects them as a person. So say for instance, going back to, let's say you're a night person. There's no reason you should have a job that starts at 6 a.m. You will not get up. That is a setup for failure. You will not be able to do that. Like, you're capable of doing it, but after some time, say for instance, you're like, you know what, I got this job, I got hired at this job. This is the schedule that they gave me from 6 to whatever, 8 or 10 hours from 6 o'clock a.m. is. Cool. So you work this schedule for 4 to 6 weeks. But come week 7, come week 8, come week 9, suddenly you're having attendance issues. Like I said, I do have an HR background, and my whole purpose for being in HR is to make sure that people are having a person-centered experience versus corporate just coming down on people for no reason or for reasons that could be resolved without discipline. So, my immediate thing would be to evaluate, why is this happening? If you were to share with me that it's because you're a night person, you're having a really hard time adjusting, let's look at a schedule change. Let's look at if we could put you into a position that allows for you to come in at a more favorable time for you. That might not be, you know, something that is your absolute ideal, but it might be 8 o'clock, it might be 10 o'clock, it might be 12 o'clock. Anything that's a little bit later that might fall into a better alignment with your circadian rhythm. Is this a health concern? Let's say you have epilepsy. With that comes, of course, there's a process when it comes down to your this impacting your work that you will have to go through. But if you know that you have epilepsy, there's a system that you could utilize when it comes down to your employment. That could be getting a new position within your company. That could be getting work accommodations. And there's other things that you can do as an individual that might consist of you getting medication for your sleep epilepsy, or ensuring that you are putting yourself in an environment that is best beneficial for you. I think like sometimes people are triggered by like the temperature of a room that makes them go to sleep. So if you know this, then maybe you could bring a sweater, or maybe you could turn the air down or turn the air up or bring a fan. So there's different things that you can do on a systematic or like organizational level that could address that, as well as there's things you could do on a personal level or medical level. The other reason that people could be late, let's just say, like I said earlier, my first statement, you just could care less about this job. You hate this job. You hate showing up. You hate the people here. You could care less. If that is your reality, then let's dig deeper into what would you prefer to do. I am really big on not wasting your time. So when it comes down to your time, why are you at a job that does not fulfill you per se? I don't think to be honest, I think a lot of jobs do not fulfill people. But when it comes down to things that you want to do, that you would volunteer to do essentially for in exchange for your time and money, Why are you spending your time here? I knew someone at one point that shared with me that they were working a job where they put small boxes into big boxes, and they just could not deal with that job. So of course there were behaviors, but what they realized is that they hated that job. So in an example like that where you hate your job, you hate showing up, you hate everything about it. Not that it's unsafe. If it's unsafe, you should leave that job immediately or talk to leadership to see if they can create a safer work environment. I'm not talking about safety. Safety comes first. I'm talking about like. So if you find that you don't like that job, like I'll use myself for an example. When I was younger, I got hired at a company that I was under the impression that all they did was sell internet options to customers. I had no idea at that time that the whole hour before you're supposed to go out and meet customers, that they would be in a Wolf of Wall Street kind of setup where everyone is in one fishbowl room yelling and screaming. There's music playing at extreme high volumes with a lot of profanity and cursing in the room, and that they would be using demeaning language to individuals. To me, it's demeaning to walk up to somebody and be like, "You don't deserve it, do you? You don't deserve that, do you? You better show us that you can work hard for it if you think you deserve it." To me, that's demeaning. Don't talk to people like that, and especially do not talk to me like that. And I am so sorry. I should have done a trigger warning if that was triggering to anyone out there. So my apologies. But if had known that that would be the work environment that I was walking into, I would have never applied to that job. So after a week, because they did this twice a week, the first day they did it, I was shocked. The second, third, fourth, fifth day, I was just like, okay, that was maybe just a fluke. Maybe that was a guest speaker that day that came in. It was like really trying to quote unquote rally up the crew, you know? And then the next week when it happened again, I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I cannot. I cannot be in this environment. It's not healthy for me. I don't like it." Um, and I did not like the job. I found out that we were doing sales to individuals who did not care at all about the service that we were offering. I was under the impression that these were people who had inquired about internet services, they were shopping around. No, we were walking up to unsuspecting people and trying to solicit them to buy our internet services. And I was like, no, this is unethical. I can't do this. So with all of that being said, and not to like drudge on about myself for too long, but just to give you a realistic example and to let you know that I have been in your shoes before, I would advise that if you find yourself in a job that is not beneficial to you, you could care less about it, and you just don't like it overall, it's time to explore other options. In that situation, I was able to quit the job and fall into a job immediately. I was posting at that time that I was looking for work, and then I got hired at this place. And it just so happened around the same time that I got hired, an associate of mine was like, "Hey, my job is hiring." And I applied to that job around the same time that I interviewed at the initial job. So by time I had worked for the first job for a week and a half, I had already interviewed and received an offer for the new job and was starting the following week. So, in a situation like that, just speaking from personal experiences and what I've seen in other people is super validating to get into a job that actually is more in alignment with your ethics, morals, and wants. I do admit there are opportunities that do not check every box, but if we can find you an opportunity that checks more than just the I'm getting paid every week or 2 weeks box, and it's an ends to a means box, that you will show up more for this new opportunity. And I use work as a vanilla concept and landing space, but this could apply with school, family, relationships, and even yourself and how you show up for yourself. There's more that I could get into with that, but at the end of the day, I just want to share that I want for you to utilize your time to focus on your reality and what will bring you joy, peace, and solace in your reality. So, with all that being said, at the end of our conversation, and in this very moment, you might be like, or you might say to yourself, okay, I get all that. Like, you showed me a good song, you showed me some good verses, you showed me some techniques, but how do I celebrate myself? Like, I don't have necessarily some of these problems that you may have mentioned in here. When it comes down to the grounding techniques, that's really cool. I'm glad you gave me something to ground myself. And the song shows me that, okay, there's other people in the world that's dealing with challenges and dealing with circumstances. So I'm not alone, but I still really don't know where to start. So, how do I celebrate me? And I'm glad you asked. When it comes down to celebrating yourself and celebrating the person that you are, what it means essentially is pouring into yourself and giving kudos to who you are today. Not who you want to be, not who you were, though you should love both and all versions of yourself. But celebrating who you are right now means giving yourself unconditional love for what you've been through, who you are today, and how you show up for yourself and how you show up in your world. It's super essential that we take the time to say to ourselves in every moment that is considered the present moment, I am capable of overcoming hard things. Yeah, I've been through a lot and I have the scars to prove it. But like the song mentioned earlier and inferred, and this is a common story amongst most people and including yourself. Without those scars, without those situations, without what has happened, you would not be the person that you are today, and you would not be here. It's important to love who you are in this moment. And yeah, we all have opportunities and areas where we can improve and do better. But the best thing to do to love yourself and to be that seed of bright light in the world, or to be that butterfly in the world, or to be that rainbow in the world that you wish to show up as every day, or at least most days, because I do have space and hold space for days when people do not feel 100%. It's okay to feel 10% or 25% or 1,000%. But in this moment, when we are talking about and dreaming about and seeing the version of ourselves that shows up in the world as that smile, as that warm hug, as that deep belly laugh, in order to do that and to show up in this way, we have to celebrate ourselves. So, how do you celebrate yourself? You can always put comments in the comment section or respond to some of these as well with your unique and special way that you celebrate yourself. But what I always share with my clients is that there are a few different ways to celebrate yourself. And I do think that all five of these methods work in sync with each other. Some of them get a little bit more priority on different days, depending on what's going on, but you need all of these elements here as your foundation and your pillars in order to celebrate yourself. So, first and foremost is a hobby or several. I think people should have several. There's no such thing as just one hobby. But have a hobby. So, that's something that me and my clients also work out. Like, what do you love doing? Like, I believe we get so caught up in just the day-to-day activities that we forget that there's other things we like to do. I think especially when you become a working adult, things become more challenging to do when it comes down to hobbies. So it's important to find time in your schedule, find a dedicated day or a specific time of the week, or maybe you can't do it every day because you're working or you're managing a family or you have additional responsibilities. But at least make time like an hour a week or a more regular schedule. And that's also something that I work on with my clients as well, building out a schedule for your self-care and your hobbies, mindfulness, honesty, regard, and relationships that reflect who you are in your life. So if that's something that you're interested in, please let me know and we can connect on that. But when it comes down to hobbies, some of your hobbies may look like reading, cooking, exercise, all sorts of things, driving, traveling, writing, because we did say reading, but there's people that also love to write as well. Your hobbies could look like you going out to different organizations and volunteering with them. Different organizations like your local pet store or animal shelter. It could be your local theater or symphony hall. It could be your park. It could be the Boys and Girls Club. It could be being a volunteer at the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It could be volunteering at the hospital. It could be also volunteering at an elder care center. The list goes on and on. There's so many different ways to get into a hobby, and I always explain and share with my clients that there's no right or wrong answer with any of these things. Let's say, for example, I believe I used this in my last video as well, but let's say when you were younger, you used to play an instrument and you're like, huh, let me try to get back into that. I want to try playing instruments again. I used to play, I don't know, the banjo when I was 7. Let me get back into that. And as a 42-year-old person, you're like, I don't like this. This is pretty boring. This is not as fun as it was before. And that's okay. Let's try something different then. So, some of that might even look like things that you may have never tried before. I always advise for us to try things that you have done before as well as things that you haven't done before. So, maybe you've never gone paintballing before, maybe go to a paintball tournament or club or something of that nature and see if that is something that fits you. One thing that I always share with my clients is it's important for you to explore things that helps you grow as a person, helps you learn new things about yourself, and makes you laugh. Sometimes when we're in the midst of different things, we're so busy with life that we don't get as many opportunities to laugh and have joy. However, if you go to a paintball tournament or you join a paintball club and literally the whole crew that's there with you is hilarious, they have great stories, they make you belly laugh all the time, it makes the hobby well worth it. The second way that we celebrate ourselves is to be mindful, and that is something that I also, like I said, I help all my clients with all these things. But one thing, especially that I'm really big on, is being mindful, especially with my movement coaching that I provide to my clients, and actually us sitting in the moment and being in our present selves and our present body. So being mindful could look like you having grace with yourself and having self-forgiveness. That could look like, let's say you realize you made a mistake yesterday at work, or you said something out of turn. Like maybe you and your friends were hanging out over the weekend and you were so excited about the conversation that here it is 3 or 4 days later, you realize that your friend never got a chance to finish what they were saying because you were so excited about the conversation that you cut them off and then you went into your own story, etc., etc. I have been one of those people before sometimes, and I think we all do it, so it's totally fine. But being able to have grace for yourself in that moment is one of those things that are a result of being mindful, saying to yourself, you know what? I'm not mad at myself or I don't feel guilty, or I don't feel bad that let's say, going back to the cut your friend off. Because in that moment, what I realized is I was very excited. But what I will do next time is I will be mindful that I need to let the other person finish what they're saying. And that could look like, I know me sometimes, if I'm having a really good conversation, there's a lot of high points. I bust out a piece of paper, and all my friends know this about me. I take out a piece of paper and a pen, and as they're talking, I'm engaging, but I'm writing things down too. So I want to make sure that they say everything that they are wanting to share. And then from there, I pull out my piece of paper, like, oh my gosh, remember when you said you did this, and the third? Yeah, I want to say this, and the third too. Or, yeah, you could do XYZ in relation to selling your couch or whatever it is. So I always find tools and resources that's available for you in order for you to practice being more mindful, whether that be in conversation, whether that be in a moment, or even just with yourself. Another way of being mindful is to just sit with yourself. Realize where you are in the moment and how far you have come. I think sometimes we get so caught up on making sure that we're leaving the house, making sure that we're buying the coffee, making sure that we're beating the traffic, that we forget that some of us used to be homeless. Some of us used to do very poorly in school and thought that we would not be where we are today. Some of us used to be riddled with illness, and now we have a healthy, functioning body. Some of us used to only have negative thoughts in our minds, but now we're filled with an abundance of positivity and people that share those sentiments to us out loud. Being mindful is more than just a word, and it goes deeper, way, way deeper than I can explain in these last couple moments that I have with you on this current conversation that we're having. But being mindful is bringing yourself back to yourself. I think if you think about ourselves or yourself as like a deck of cards, sometimes we're spread all over the place. But being mindful is when you gather up all those cards from all over your table, stack them up into a neat little block, and you just be. You just exist as all versions of yourself. Unconditional love for yourself and respecting who you are in this moment. So that could mean with your saggy boobs, with your chipped teeth, with your balding hairline, whatever the case is, that you might look at yourself saying, oh, I don't know about that. That wasn't there a year ago or 3 years ago. But more so being like, you know what? Look at who I am today. I'm proud of me. I'm happy of who I am. I'm a wonderful man. I'm a wonderful woman. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so thankful to be here in this moment. And I think, depending on who you worship, I thank God, I thank the universe, I thank my circumstances, I thank my ancestors, I thank me, I thank my family, I thank my friends, I thank the powers that be for who I am in this moment and what I am in this moment. And as you can tell, I could probably go on and on about that. That is one of my pillars when it comes down to the foundation of my coaching. But moving on to self honesty. Self honesty is another way that you can celebrate yourself. Self honesty looks like being able to say to yourself, you know what? I know I got invited to go out this weekend, but I honestly don't feel like going out. I don't think that will serve me and my higher self. I don't think that will serve the people that I'll be around because I'll be tired or grumpy or angry or frustrated or distracted. Being able to say, you know what? I've worked really hard this week and I'm a bit overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with life, or I'm overwhelmed with my circumstance. I need to call in sick this week, or I need to call in sick today. Or even for the person on the flip side of calling in sick, that person that's really sick, you have coronavirus, or you have a sore throat, or you didn't get enough sleep and you have 100 hours of PTO, or even if you have 8 hours of PTO, you're sneezing, you're coughing, your eyes are running, your stomach is hurting, you're going to the bathroom every 5 to 10 minutes. Be honest with yourself and say, you know what? Let me go ahead and call in today. Let me use that PTO. Or even if you don't have PTO, let me call in because I'm not feeling well today. And stand on that. Know that you need that time for yourself. Self-regard is being able to be in the mindset of realizing that you're not perfect. You're not a perfect being. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to wish for redos or restarts. And self regard looks like, you know what? I've learned something from this moment. Even though it was a mistake, even though it wasn't something that I intended to do. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing, it could be a positive thing. Maybe, you accidentally took a detour because you missed your exit. And it turns out your detour got you to your location 15 minutes quicker than the GPS previously predicted. So, having regard for yourself in those moments to be receptive of the lessons that you're learning and actually learn from them, apply that and be better, do better, see better. And last but not least are our relationships. First is the relationship with yourself, and you strengthen that by the four elements that I've already mentioned. You also strengthen your relationship with yourself by having boundaries, by having a standard operation, standard operation procedure of how people should treat you and operate around you. Some people don't tolerate people smoking around them. They're like, hey, I can't deal with that. That's not good for me. Some people don't like it when people are cursing, you know. Some people don't mind. Some people are flexible with those type of stipulations. Whatever your stipulations are for yourself, your SOP for yourself is how you build that relationship with yourself. And then you share that information with those around you. So, for example, you don't tolerate, like myself, you don't tolerate people being evil, malicious, and terrible to you. Thus, you do not allow other people around you who would treat you evil and maliciously, and also that treat others maliciously and evil. So that could look like what is presented on the surface and in the real world. You have a friend group, you guys are growing, things are getting really good, but now you're realizing that this one particular person is always talking down. It's one thing to critique something or to mention something or to notice something, but this is the fifth time that Veronica has said that she doesn't like Amy because of the way she speaks. She doesn't like how she enunciates words, or she doesn't like that she always tips her server 20%. That's just dumb. La 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 la. You can notice that, and you could address it if you want in that moment and say, hey, I really don't like you talking about Amy like that. I like Amy. She's a friend of ours. Please treat Amy with more respect. Amy has the choice to tip her waiter anything that she wants. Please don't talk about Amy like that around me. Please don't talk about Amy like that, period. And you could also say, hey, I don't tolerate negative talk about people around me. Please don't do that anymore. Or you can say, hey, I realize that you talk very negatively about Amy, and that conflicts with my personal boundaries and the way that I want to be around people and be in the world. So I no longer want to be friends with you. All of those options are available to you because ultimately it goes back to our overarching message, which is celebrating yourself. Celebrating yourself looks like pouring into you in ways that help you grow, and ways that help you build your muscle of being there for yourself, protecting your values, protecting your boundaries, and also acknowledging who you are, where you've been, and preparing for the person you want to be. So we did go a little over in time because I want to make sure that you get a full and complete message. I want to say thank you again for spending this time with me today. I want to thank you for sharing your energy with me today. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Have a good day.